Hi, this is Korinne Carpino, and today we're going to create an intuitive landscape with alcohol ink. I'm starting with a piece of graphics Durabright opaque white film. I've added a little bit of blending solution to the film, and now I'm applying ink straight from the bottle. These are Ranger inks in Glacier, Wild Plum, and Honeydew. And I'm using a brush that is filled with 99% alcohol to move this ink around. I'm wiping off any excess ink on my paper towel. And I'm going to add a little bit more blue ink in the bottom to create hopefully a little bit of green as this dries. And we're just going to let this dry on its own, and the ink will continue to move while it's wet, and it will create a background. Now that the background's dry, I'm going to add a tree. I already have this little bit of pink showing on the right hand side of the background that arches towards the left, and so that gives me a starting point. When we paint intuitively, I like to pour the background and just see what I get, and then decide what the landscape's going to look like. So I'll continue to use this brush, which is damp with some 99% alcohol, and just start to give some shape to this tree. I'll just continue to move the ink around, remove ink, and continue to work on getting a pleasing shape. Now this is going to be somewhat whimsical. This tree is not going to be totally realistic, just something fun. I'm trying to get some swirls and dimension in the trunk. And notice how when I poured the background, I didn't come all the way out to the edges of the paper. So white space is fine, and sometimes it creates a very fun painting. So we'll continue, as I said, to just pull out these limbs. So when we're making a tree, whether realistic or whimsical, the trunk needs to be big enough to support the branches, and the branches should get thinner as they go out. Now, that branch that I just put in is way too thick. The ink spread further than I wanted when I put my brush through it. So I'll hide that later with some leaves. There's really no way to correct it. So we'll just hide it. So depending on how much alcohol is on this brush will depend on how thick those branches get. And I'm barely touching the paper. And you will see me go back and forth, widening branches, widening the base as I work, so that at least the tree looks stable, and the trunk is big enough to support the branches. When you're doing these little branches, if you lift your brush up right at the end of the branch, you should end up with a nice point. And as I said, it is important not to press down too hard. The more you press as you're painting or going through inks, the wider the line will be where you remove the ink. And so you can control that by how much alcohol is on your brush and by how hard you push. Now I'm putting some yellow ink on this ink applicator tool. It has a little piece of felt on it, and adding some blending solution. I'm going to tap that off on my paper towel first because I want to control how far this ink spreads. And I can just gently tap this around these branches and start to get some leaves on my tree. Now I'm using yellow because it is going to mix with the blue and it is going to turn green for me. Now I'm taking a little orange ink. I'm going to pick up that orange from the background and I'm putting a first layer of color in this tree. And I'm going to come in with some, again, it's all Ranger inks with some sepia, which is a nice warm brown ink. And I have very little ink on my brush. And I'm just creating some tiny branches. I'm using a number 2 liner brush. And so we'll continue to give shape to this tree, as if this tree is kind of blowing in the wind, blowing to the left. Just tell yourself a story as you're working. I find that that is helpful for me with intuitive paintings. What's the story? So just continue to put little branches in. And I'll add some more brown to the tree. I'm actually using a very wet brush now, so you can see that I'm getting some nice texture in our funky little tree trunk there. And I'm going to come back in with this stamper tool or applicator tool. So the ink's pretty dry on this piece of felt now, and I can make even smaller marks. So I've decided the wind's blowing some leaves off the tree. I also want to blend in those branches a little bit. And now I'm going to make a base. So I have lots of ink on this piece of paper, and I'm using a larger brush and just some alcohol and letting this drip down. So it's creating some area that in a very abstract sense looks like rocks, as if this tree is sitting on something now. So that it has a fun rocky base. And we're just going to add a little foreground here as well, as if there's some kind of land in front of that color in the back, which we'll call mountains. And so it's fun just to drop that alcohol and watch that ink move and decide where you want to take it. So now I have a tree sitting on a piece of land, and I'm going to come into it again with, this time, a liner brush. And I want to just redefine some of the roots of the tree and make it look like it's coming down through this land. Get a little bit more orange in here. And next, I'm going to add another root following this rock line. Come back over it. I don't want it to be so orange. And I'm going to add some more brown to the tree. Just loosely, pretty wet, and let that ink move by itself. Little tiny branch out the back. And again, I'll add just a little bit more color to these main branches. So these are very relaxing paintings for me to do. I have no plan. I'm not looking at a reference photo. It's coming out of my head depending on what I see in that background. It's a great exercise for beginners. It's a great exercise just for relaxing. I'm putting a little bit more yellow ink on my stamper tool. Some leaves have fallen down on the ground. I want it to be a little more, that yellow to show a little more. There we go. So a little more ink. And I'm getting pretty close to done. I'm going to just tap a little more yellow in that tree. I've used all of the colors, just those same 3 colors throughout the entire painting. So here it is, the finished painting. And I hope you enjoyed this and try it yourself. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit the like button. To see more alcohol ink painting techniques with the alcohol ink art community, just click subscribe. Happy inking!